Well, forget about that mission to Mars. We need to be on a mission to end restraint and seclusion, right? Because we know when students are restrained or secluded at school, it causes lifelong trauma. So I'm glad you're here with us today to join this conversation because we're going to discover ways that you can speak up against restraint and seclusion and take your advocacy from an individual level to a policy level. So if you are new to the show, I'm Charmaine Tanner. I'm a parent, a retired teacher, an advocate for students around the country. And I do this weekly Facebook Live show so we can bring special guests like we have today and talk about important topics. And the whole idea is to make sure that we can become more effective advocates as we're speaking up for our kids. So, and I'm going to have to look at my cheat sheet because I have to make sure I introduce Michele right. So we have Michele Zephier with us today, and she is going to be sharing her son Dylan's story of what he experienced at school. Michele is a parent. You might not know, but she is an awesome professional photographer. So I love going to her Facebook page and seeing her new photos. But she's also a University Center of Excellence for Developmental Disability Programs parent advocate. And she is a board member on the Down Syndrome Advocates in Action in Nebraska. And she has been on this wonderful mission to end restraint and seclusion. So welcome, Michele, to our show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking me.
Well, you unfortunately have, you and Dylan have unfortunately experienced some things at school that sometimes we feel like, oh, we read that in the newspaper or we might see something on Facebook, but to actually have gone through the experiences that you and your son have gone through is really an important story to share. And I just also wanted to caution for some families, if you're watching this and this subject is going to trigger you, you just might think about how you can feel comfortable. So either type things in the comments and we will respond to questions, or just sit back and listen, and that's fine too. So Michele, what would you like to do to start us out? Do you want to share your PowerPoint or?
I want to say thank you. Second, please forgive me. This is my first podcast, PowerPoint and all that kind of stuff. And third, I really want to thank you because there were times last winter when I was cooking in the kitchen and watching your live stream and typing in the comments and, lost, not knowing what to do. And so our community is so important. And I'm just so thankful for your advocacy because getting our stories out there is really what we need to do.
Right. Oh, exactly. Exactly. So where would you like to start with Dylan's story?
Well, Dylan, I can show you some of the PowerPoint if you want to.
Okay.
I can talk a little bit about him. I'm going to scooch it over. You guys can see that.
Yes, perfect.
So he was super cute little baby. He walked early. He was walking, almost on target by 1 year. Here's his family. That's me and him and his big sister Shelby and his big brother Braden, his little brother Apollo, and of course Scout, his dog Scout, which we love, and he's featured a lot. But here's another picture of Dylan. He's always been a curious little boy. just adorable. He loves swinging like a lot of kids do with autism. Dylan was born with Down syndrome. This picture, he's saying, everybody love everybody.
Huh.
Cute little video. It was him with his sister doing acro aerobics. Here we are. We're advocating here for a Nebraska bill. It was a restraint bill, LB 147. So, we talk about the struggle is real. We're trying to create a great learning environment for our kids. We know our kids are capable. We know Dylan he can read. I've taught him a lot. He can play the drums.
Cool.
He wants to advocate. He loves puppets. These are some puppets from his sister. This is down at our state capitol building, advocating for rights. Here's Dylan learning about archaeology and dinosaurs, which he loves from online school because he's not in school. He's really creative. He's funny, hilarious. You're right. He's been in the paper. This is a runway show that he did. He just rocked it. I mean, he's midair. He's so cute. He loves to dress up. And I know maybe you can't switch in between, but I'll show you. There's a picture, from the summer where he is, on the front page of the paper. Well, this little kid is celebrated everywhere, but in school. So a little bit about me. I am a photographer. I've been a photographer for since about 12 years old. Here's me at school at Lincoln High here in the town I'm sitting in, at my high school. And that was just a little write-up the paper did of me. So I've been a photographer for a long time. I love advocacy, and I like to focus on civil rights. And I am a student of UNL. I don't have a degree beyond my my associate's degree, but my interest is philosophy, ethics, and civil rights, and telling that story. And this is me with just doing some advocating and telling the stories that. Here's just some pictures of I've done everything from fine art to runway shows. This is a famous baseball player who is super cute. Roger Clemens, but I got to meet him. I mean, I get to do all this kind of stuff. I do a lot of volunteer and nonprofit too, like with Make-A-Wish. And so this is just a t-shirt I have it's hard to stop somebody who never gives up. And I think we need to be telling our stories. And, that's where that's why we're here. This is me talking with Nebraska Senator Michele Kavanaugh, about legislation. Here's some advocacy work that we're doing. And then, of course, we'll stop maybe here because this gets into the seclusion room.
So how old was Dylan when he was, first secluded, and give us some of the context behind that?
Sure. Dylan started being secluded in second grade, and third grade was really, really bad. He was secluded up to 8 times a day for several months. And a lot of it as a parent, I felt like I was very connected, but I also felt like there was so much I didn't know. And there was so much that I felt like I didn't have the right to know. I'd never felt like I had the right to be at school. I always felt like I was that parent. When in reality, I was desperately seeking more information from the school. Everything was so private. There was this yellow shower room that was supposed to alter his behavior. And one thing led to another, and trying to get some kind of resolution, we wound up, having to switch schools. There was a better situation. And as a parent, I didn't know the depth and width of the amount of complicated information I was going to have to be able to process, to be able to write an IEP that was going to keep my child in a safe situation. And that is a situation where he's with hopefully 20 other kids where he is included, or if that he was somewhere where there was a camera, because my son is mostly nonverbal. So through this whole journey, it's been really devastating. We've moved through 5 school districts.
Oh my goodness.
And my son is in technically 8th grade. It's almost like it doesn't matter. And the amount of stress, cost, the cost to our family, it just is overwhelming. I'm sitting here today and I look all put together, but us moms or parents with special needs know that it's for real, that my income's been affected so much that I have a shut-off notice for my electricity. But the only place where this, seclusion, kind of this, is almost an absurd practice. The only place it happens to my son is within the walls of a school. And a lot of us parents say, if we were to do that at home, it's clearly abuse. It's clearly abuse. So what I want to do is I want to bring awareness, bring these stories out, because we're a small community. We're such a small community that our voices are very quiet. And I think we need to really raise those voices right now. There's national news with CASA, the Keeping All Students Safe Act. Yes. And I think we really need to elevate our voices. We really, really need to turn it up right now and reach out to our representatives, our state and national levels. So one funny thing, I'm kind of new at presenting, and I did get a chance to talk this summer at our Disability Pride event. And one of our senators was there. And so, to me, that it was very, very important. So when I came to introduce myself, I said, my son is who I am. I'm a parent advocate. My son's 14. He's got Down syndrome. And that I was really excited to talk to them today because of the power that I think the disability community is gaining right now. And told them a little bit about CASA, and that I am a certain kind of person, that some people think change is good and some people don't. And I'm one of those people that think change is good. And as I was standing in front of this, this huge crowd and, with the senator, I did my little thing, which is, I'm going to show you how easy change is. I'm going to change right now. Okay. So I reach over, I grab my shirt, which my friend here in Lincoln made for me. So if you guys want some, I'll get that information.
Yes.
So I pull on my shirt. I say, look how easy it is to change I tuck it in, and my underwear, which was white, is sticking out just a little bit. So on all the pictures, you can see my little tinies. But um, you know, I'm a real person. I'm a real mom. I really do live in Lincoln, Nebraska. We really have been in 5 different school districts. My son really has been secluded up to 8 times a day. I don't know, how we go from front page, you know, front page cuteness. How does he keep this cuteness going? How does he stay, sane through all this? Um, so I guess maybe I can pause there, and see if there's any questions.
Yeah. So Karen is in Colorado, but she was driving and she said she's not getting good service, so she'll have to catch the replay. And Lissa is here with us from Idaho. So, hey, Lissa. And we have other live people on. So say hi so we can welcome you. And if you have any questions for Michele, feel free to post them. Michele, so one of the things that I was thinking about when you were talking about Dylan and that there were times where he was secluded 8 times during the day. And so how did you get that communication? I mean, was the school up front and every time he was secluded, they would, log it and send you the log,
Yes.
or what
Mhm.
happened there?
The first school, their seclusion and restraint policy, which is different for every single school in every district. So every district is different. That particular one, they did send me emails and alerts to let me know. But it was status quo. They were
Um,
doing it, and the teacher, bless her heart, was cute, blonde, brand new teacher. And, she thought that this was going to modify his behavior in a positive way. And my argument was, if it's modifying his behavior in a positive way, why do we have negative, or we have increased negative behavior, and we have increased frequency of seclusion? And
right.
if it's working so well, why are we up to 8 times a day now? And at that point, I did, there was a lot of in between. There was a lot of IEP meetings. I mean, we're talking, I don't know, over the course of 5 years, maybe 50,
Oh my.
maybe more. I
Right.
really just don't even know. At some point, it became, um, it felt like a standoff. It felt like I was just being utterly ridiculous. It felt like I was a terrible parent.
Um,
I was told I was a terrible parent. I was told, we do.
right.
I mean, I say, and maybe a lot of you don't know. Uh, he was my son. Finally, you kind of get written out of the IEP, and I didn't. Or I mean, you don't get written out of the IEP. You kind of finally get written out of any chance for inclusion
Um,
all of a sudden. Um, it wasn't getting better going to a different district. I thought, okay, well, my son's been traumatized. Maybe if we go to a different district, he's not going to have that. He can start fresh. We'll get it where, I mean, I'm begging and pleading with teachers, please just don't seclude him. Just don't do that, because the actions that he was, for his behavior in the seclusion room, were um, institutionalized behavior.
um,
So things that were happening to him. And, there were 3 other boys in that school that were all about the same age. There was another older boy that was, moving into junior high or middle school. And, I I was always there. They would call me, you need to come get him. So I was there a lot. I rearranged my work schedule. I rearranged it so that I could be available. I, went through my life savings, moving. There were other boys, and how they acted were the same because I was started to ask parents. I didn't care anymore. It was desperation. I was going to I was going to be the bad guy. I was going to be the one that asked the questions because it's not right to have this going on. And there were, like I said, back to the behavior, Dylan was stripping off his clothes. He was pulling the carpet off the floor because that's the only thing that was in the room. He was urinating on the carpet. He was defecating. And these are all behaviors that happen in an institution. And so I finally got to the point where I was asking, are we teaching him to live in an institution, or are we going to teach him to be out in the world that's on the outside of these walls? Because when he is at home, when he is at the bank, the grocery store, grandma's house, the doctor, the hospital, mom, to go get his ID, just all of these things, there's no seclusion room. There is no behavior modification seclusion room in any place, anywhere outside those school walls. And so, you start to ask that ethical question. What are we doing? What are we doing to our children? And I am from Nebraska. And when I talk to my people of the disability community and, a handful of senators, I said, this is happening to 80% of the students that are secluded and restrained in Nebraska schools have a disability. And when we talk about philosophy and ethics, how we know something is right, sometimes we check it by inserting another ingredient, which I'm from Nebraska. What if 80% of our male high school quarterbacks were being restrained and secluded in high school? Would somebody care or notice then? Of course they would. If there was a high school football quarterbacks being restrained at that rate, they would definitely take notice, and it would end immediately. So why is it our kids? Why is it our students or students with disabilities? Why is their education so inconsequential? And whose responsibility is it? Because the bar is on the floor. The bar, it's worse than on the floor. I beg parents, please ask, go to schools, go ask them, can I see your seclusion rooms? Because at least in Nebraska, there's one in every room.
That's what I was wondering, if it's pretty standard, that they have a seclusion room, or sometimes I've seen in schools where they have bookshelves and file cabinets to make that seclusion room. I've also been in schools where it is a heavy metal door, and when the child is in the seclusion room, or the quiet room, like they like to call it, and that metal door is shut, it was locked from the inside. So it's like, how can these things be in our public schools? It's
right. So if I'm just going to bring my PowerPoint back up, and just let you see, this is one. Now, when you do put that up, Charmaine and I already discussed, I can't see what you guys are seeing. So
so we're seeing a picture. That's first slide of the padded door.
Right. Okay. So this is Dylan's one of the seclusion rooms. There were 4 in this kind of little enclave. This is back. Of course, we're entering through the school. We're supposed to enter through the back docks.
Oh,
This is a special education room. It's back behind the gym that Dylan had to walk through the gym class that he couldn't be included in. Um, so anyway, but what you can see on this door, and what's really, really a telltale sign of this story that's happening across the United States, is this kid or whoever was in there clearly had 3 chances. So the whole purpose, at least in Nebraska, for a seclusion room would be if the child is doing something that's unsafe. And it's so unsafe that they have to seclude them. So it's not to be used for a behavior modification. So sorry, I did pull that down. But obviously you can tell that because there is a 1, 2, 3 and they're crossed out, that this was definitely used for behavior modification because there's documentation of it right there on that little window.
huh.
So the kids, had to do something in order to get out. And whatever that was, just being safe wasn't enough. Kids are in these rooms long enough. They're in these rooms with supplies. Obviously, this kid had a marker. They're in there a lot. And that's a denial of faith. I mean, look at that door.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we're talking children. These are children. And one thing, and again, I want to preface that I don't have a degree. I'm not a doctor. So, a lot of what I'm saying is theory, but, our kids already aren't promised much in school. Like I said, the bar is starting, from the bottom. Sorry, it looks like I don't know which direction I'm going here.
Oh, yeah. So now you have some
There we go.
photos. You had some photos of Dylan, and were there like bruises or?
Yes. So I'm just gonna see what I can do here on my screen to go back to the PowerPoint. And so those were some pictures of, the bruises that Dylan came home with. This is so sorry.
No, that's
I'm
fine.
just lost here.
I know. So I think, yeah, you're on a blank.
Yeah, I'm on a blank screen, so I need to go back, but I'm just not for sure how to go back.
That's okay.
Oh, there we go. So this was the last day that Dylan ever, was in school. And that is a compression mark. I'm sure that other parents who have experience with this. Now, I have hundreds of pictures, and Dylan has literally had hundreds of marks left on him.
Wow.
That's his neck, and his principal is the one who restrained and secluded him on this day. And his principal is a 350-pound coach from back in the day. And, he has very, very fat fingers. And so this is Dylan's arm, and this is his elbow. If you can see my cursor. So Dylan was restrained at some point, held with fingers that would span, his closed arm because those marks, lined up.
Right.
So, and that's just him. And another picture of him and I. So I'll go back to us again. That really, I have hundreds of pictures of Dylan with marks. If he was being restrained for behavior modification, he can be stubborn. He's nonverbal. He's grumpy. he's bored,
Well, and that's the thing is to, we always hear about behavior as communication, and it's like, if people would be able to spend some more time getting to know our kids and to be able to have a really collaborative relationship with the family, because there's a wealth of information that about, Dylan. And if the school would be open, to hearing that and trying something, right? Why not try something
yes.
and change? But yeah, it's heartbreaking. And Karen is with us, and Karen says, yes, my son called it the blue thing. We had no idea, and they had not provided any notice about his seclusion. He was a third grader. Yeah, and that's the thing. And I also think about what your state law is about restraint and seclusion. I know in Colorado, there's some advocacy organizations that are going to be introducing a new bill this coming legislative session. I know in Idaho, we have no state law that pertains to restraint and seclusion in schools. There are some districts in Idaho that have a school district policy. So one of the things that I really hope parents do is check out, what is the law in your state? What is the regulation, the policy in your school district? I know at least one school district in Idaho that parents have to specifically give consent for the use of restraint and seclusion. And so many parents don't understand in that district that policy exists. So I don't know, Michelle, like I would think that you became this investigative reporter. I mean, how did you dig in and how did you find the information out, of what was happening?
Well, I kept hearing from the teachers, well, we had to restrain. Today was a bad day. We had to restrain him 8 times. Um, and I would get that, and so I was like, okay, well, you know, so I come and I get him, and and I go look at him, and he's naked, and there's urine on the floor, and the carpet in the corner is pulled up, and he's in third grade. And I'm thinking he is being stripped entirely of his dignity 8 times a day by who these teachers, or who I'm putting him in front of every day. I'm saying to him, go try harder today. Just whatever you do, I just don't do anything to make them put you in the seclusion room. Just if we could just stay out of the seclusion room, because when we do start to investigate what's going on, we start to see that this maybe, has underlying connections to therapies beyond school. We know about the school to prison pipeline, which I learned a lot about. These kids, what we're missing is that, where are the counselors? Where's the brain work between prison, which is the seclusion room, in the school? What
Right.
happens? I would beg, like, why can't you just calm him down? Why can't we just talk to him? Why can't we know that when the bell goes off, my son is not going to handle it well if he doesn't have on the headphones, because the school says they can't move the bell. That's seems to be extra loud in this little, special education room. Um, so you're going to have to put me back on track again.
No, you're fine. And I think, one of the other things when I hear you talking about trying to help the staff, like what are some other ways that we can do things? And just that mother thing of saying goodbye to your son before he goes to school and just praying and hoping that today will be a day where he's not restrained or secluded. I mean, it's so hard to go there. What I wish is, we could have funding so people like Ross Green could have specific training for every school. I know I was going to put up
my tabs, my notes.
Yes.
Because what was happening to Dylan, what was happening to him was predictable. I knew when it was going to happen. I knew that when I sent the email to my special education director, hey, is there any way we can muffle the sound of the bell in the special education room? Because one of the times my son ran away was he eloped, and it was during a fire drill.
Right.
Now, if we can't control our environment during a fire drill, then we are failing our children. We're failing to plan. Some of these things are so predictable, they'd happen over and over again. So,
right. Yes, I know. Lost at School. And I'll be sending out some resources that Michele is sharing today and also some additional ones in my email tomorrow morning. So if you don't get my, current emails that I send out, go here and sign up at iep.today/weekly adv tips. Because we need to get this information out to more people. And not only school boards and, teachers and staff, but also your wider community. They need to know what public taxpayer dollars are going for when they are building these seclusion rooms, when they are restraining our students. I mean, it's like, this might happen. You might see something like this in a prison, in a jail situation, but in a public school with kids, it's wrong in a prison situation too. But to think like somehow this has become the strategy that so many teachers use.
Right. And there's no evidence. There is no evidence. So you're going to have to forgive me because I am very much a reader. And so that means I don't talk a lot. So I don't pronounce things right, especially names. But Michele Zephier, she just posted something, yesterday about, if we're going to seclude, it means, institution. If we're going to include, it means so much, better of a outcome. And we just can't continue when we know what we know about the brain. We know fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. We know that there's no possible scientific way that a child can learn anything when they are being secluded and restrained. All the thing that is happening is that these children are learning maladaptive coping strategies of being literally put in a box. So an interesting thing about Nebraska and where I live in Lincoln and where I got the grant position at USID is that in Beatrice, Nebraska is where kind of the disability community civil rights started. And that was with a documentary like 60 years ago. It's a black and white documentary called Out of the Darkness. and it spurred Wolfensberger to, and he was a doctor at UNMC, and he's the one who started saying that people, just because they have a disability, you know, doesn't mean that they don't have rights. And, you know, my son thinks, and, you know, so therefore he does exist. So his experience is, you know, it matters. His experience matters. And I study philosophy. Like I said, I don't have my degree because do you know how hard it is to go to school and get a degree when your son is being secluded and restrained? Or when you pull your son out, because the least restrictive environment is at home.
Okay.
You know, COVID saved us. It really, really did.
Huh.
It bought us, you know, from March 2020
Right.
until now. My son is still home, and he loves school, and he knows what school can be. He knows it can be good. But for him, and for a lot of students like him, he has to walk into a school where his abuser is sitting in the corner. I mean, if we, like I said, we check if how things work, we check if things are right or wrong by, you know, as a philosopher, by putting in a different ingredient. So let's say little Susie in 3rd grade, let's say her abuser is a rapist and is sitting in her classroom. And how do we expect Susie to go to school every day and look at that and act right and learn and not have PTSD and not feel like there's nobody on their side and not feel like they're back in this segregated classroom where nobody is going to save them? Where, you know, they're next to the school, they're next to the classroom where the teacher knows, you know what, the kids scream, we just ignore it. So I follow philosophers. TikTok is the rage, right? And so I follow one philosopher. He's a very young guy, and he mentioned something about Debord. Debord was a French philosopher, and in the late 60s, he talked about the spectacle. Okay, and the spectacle is basically a critique of society and capitalism in particular. And what it is to unpack it quickly, is that Debord saw our society as being obsessed with the appearance of things, while we deny reality, truth, and experience. Okay, we deny all these things so that we can accept what we think, you know, is right, or what we want to see. And, you know, I think when we hide these things and when we don't talk about these things, and, you know, a lot of conflict resolution with schools are done, you know, in-house, I want to say. You know, we're just not getting these stories out, and people aren't hearing about it. And so back to the, you know, these things, in the end, basically the spectacle deduces down to situational ethics. And situational ethics is, it's okay at school, but it's illegal at home.
Right.
And this is, you know, this is not okay. It leads to, you know, the theory of alienation. It leads to, you know, which means that we are only conditionally accepting our students. And if we don't, we're going to put them in an archaic box. You know, and it's just, it doesn't go far from, you know, who is this? What are we doing to these people who have a right and a civil right to be there and not be abused? You know, we need to stop denying the 3 things that are reality, truth, and experience. The reality is, well, I'm sorry, let me go to the truth. The truth is that, like you said, most states, they're not required to have seclusion policies. They're not really even required to teach our kids anything. That burden is on the parents, and it takes us hours and hours and hours of advocacy classes. Why doesn't my teacher know about a differentiated classroom? Why do I have to know this? Why do I
Right.
have to know what PTSD is doing to my 14-year-old, my 8-year-old? So, at some point, the failure to provide protection, cameras, inclusive environments, why not just get rid of the seclusion room? Why not just get rid of it all together? What would that do if we just took it out of the room?
Oh, I know. And I know that you have also, worked with Guy Stevens, and I wanted to show his nonprofit's Facebook group. So I would encourage people to go over to End Seclusion. And he is the founder of Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint. And I interviewed Guy probably, I don't know if it's been a couple years. So in the show notes that I'll email out tomorrow, I'll also put the link for that interview with Guy. But do you want to talk any more, Michele, about the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint and the work that they've been doing?
Yes. So in networking and just trying to find some answers, I did run across Guy Stevens, and what a shining light he is. And it is really through him that I learned about Dr. Green. As a matter of fact, I have to go back to this. Dr. Green has book clubs for this book. And so one thing that I'm doing here in Nebraska is I'm going to upstart these book clubs.
Oh, good.
So that the stakeholders are going to have some information, because they need to know the science. The science is 50 years ahead. We're still asking for just not to be beaten in a shower room in a public school, or a 3-year-old with a disability who can be on the front page of a paper and celebrated, but institutionalized daily. And the reality is that we can't deny is that we're very small. We're a very small community, and we already have so much more on our plate. So kind of the last thing to just kind of talk about is experience. Again, as a photographer, our stories are so important. We have got to shout these, send them to me. I've started an art show with Dylan called Here Comes the Sun.
Huh.
And that's it is a play on Out of the Darkness. And I implore everybody to watch that, because it shows, really the roots of seclusion, the roots of restraint. Because, we know what happens. We know what happens when we treat kids like this. We know what their brain is doing. We know now. We have tons of research, and we have zero research or zero proof that seclusion works. So again, back to the Lost at School, using collaborative, proactive solutions. That's what I want to bring to every child really in the world. It's just time.
Yes. And why not, right?
And why not? Why not? I mean,
Why not?
exactly. I am. It's such a weird time. It's such a difficult time. I don't know when or if my son will ever be able to go back to school. Every night he has, before he goes to bed, he has anxiety and fear and things that he says are, I want to kill myself. I'm a bad kid. I'm going to go to jail. I know that other parents have heard have, that's what the teachers have called it. That's the school to prison pipeline. Yes, he is going to go to jail if they keep using that room, because the room is going to teach him how to be secluded. All it does is
Right,
reinforce it every time, every time. Um, and Ross Green has proven over and over and over again that our children can communicate, that they have intelligence and capabilities, and that their brain function is going to shut off if we seclude them. And it's not going to teach them anything except for maladaptive PTSD behaviors that I hear. And I record them every night because at some point, he will hopefully get diagnosed with some PTSD issues. What do we do? Do we have to sue the schools? I did hire a civil rights lawyer, and she works with special education and has for 20 years or more. And she's like, I hate to break it to you, but you're going to have a long drawn out fight because you're going up against, this huge school system. And, I'm out of savings. I mean, I can't stay home that much longer.
right.
COVID's going to bring my son back to a school situation. What am I going to do?
Oh, exactly. And, I think we always, start by advocating for our individual children. And that's where we need to start. And that's where we need to be as a parent. But I also, look at how you've reached out to, senators, representatives to share Dylan's story, but also to share what are some possibilities of how we can change this, right? Because it
Right,
is not something that we have to continue. So as
right,
parents, we can ask for training to be written in the IEP, but it can't just be like a one-shot workshop. When we're this culture we have to change. So it's got to be ongoing efforts, and it's got to be more than you doing it by yourself, right?
right.
And that's where, I'm hoping that people start getting more connected with other allies in their communities, because this is a huge systemic problem. And
It is.
we can't solve it one kid at a time. We will be here for decades,
Right.
and it won't happen. So how did you get like the strength, or what did you tell yourself to be like, I am going to talk to my senator. I am going to speak out against
Mhm.
this.
Well, I've always been um, civil minded. I remember when I was in school before Dylan was even born, in an ethics class, writing about um, whether or not the quad test for those that are pregnant, is ethical. And of course, it's not. It's genocide. And so the reason why I bring in a little bit of kind of this philosophy is because it's not very far from, you know, um, I mean, it's not very far from
Right.
genocide. It just isn't. I mean, we are knowingly holding these kids back. We are knowingly psychologically damaging these kids, and it affects the family. This affects his sister, his brother. You know, his brother's going to be getting married next year. I'm broke because I am still at home with my child because I feel like that's the only safe place for him. And I am going to have to take care of him for the rest of his life. And, you know, school's really only 6 more years.
Right.
That's a lot of psychological damage that he can be headed for if I don't save him from it. So I've always been civil minded, but, you know, it really came from getting connected with the other advocates in my area. And it started with connecting nationally then. Like I said, Charmaine, I was talking to you in the beginning. I know we're so tight on time, but you know, I remember just in my kitchen cooking in cold winter last year and just being so thankful that we were connected. So that's not, you know, I used to think, oh man, you know, I want to shoot higher. I want to, and that is what brought me to the senators, was knowing that in the end, legislation is the only thing that's going to hold our schools accountable. Because right now there just isn't. It's just lacking. So CASA, yes.
Yeah, so there, and like I said, I'll put some more resources in the newsletter, but you know, there's a Capitol, you know, switchboard phone number in Washington, D.C. that you can call and get in touch with your senator. You can look, you know, Google your senator's phone numbers in Washington and also back in your home state. They do listen to people making phone calls, sending emails. There are staff members that keep track of all of that. And it's like beyond me to realize how many years have we been trying to get this national legislation passed. And we are, you know, in 2021, we are still here without it. So we have got to speak up, speak out, widen our circle of allies, because this cannot continue. This cannot be acceptable,
Right.
that this is how we treat kids when they go to school. You
That's,
know,
yeah.
and you
And that family, because it has
right,
wrecked our family. And you know what? It's not going to. It is not going to. Not me and not my son and not, you know, no more. I mean,
right. Oh,
just
exactly.
just no more. What we know, now it's become a spectacle. Like I said, back to that, this is just a spectacle. And the reason why we're keeping it up really is to keep a section of students down. And that's oppression. And that needs to stop.
Exactly. And Jeannie is saying that in Tennessee, I think it is, in the state of Tennessee, the students can still be paddled. Um, yeah, and when I went to high school in Georgia, and it was a long time ago, but yeah, our principal had a paddle. Talk about corporal punishment. And it's just, you know, I don't know if it's having more people hear this message, having more people hear Dylan's story. You know, hopefully it's going to compel each of us to take more action. And I, you know, it's just, I don't know, it's unfathomable that this is
Right.
the type of treatment. And like you said, when we know from research with the brain and stress and everything
Yes.
that this is totally, you know, it can't be condoned on any level.
You're right. It can't. It just,
So it's just so hard. It
it
is.
is.
And so I appreciate you coming on, Michele, and you did a marvelous job. And I want you
Thank
to
you
be
guys.
proud of what you've shared with us today, because through your pictures, through your words, you have been able to share a glimpse into what this does to our children.
Yes. Not only our children, I want to extend, like I said, the family,
Right.
I can't support my other son as well, you know, um, just,
Oh, I know the impact. Like you think about all the parents that can't have a job outside of the home, right?
that's right.
And I mean, like you said, that impacts the whole family. And
And
it's
the
wrong.
and the community, because
Right.
that means that, how am I going to pay my bills, and why do I have to be the one to shoulder this societal burden that we know from all of history? If you're going to do that to a child, they're going to come out problematic. And now I can't pay as many taxes into my community. um, you know
Right.
when I retire, where I have spent all my savings, I'm done. I spent all my savings in April. So, I'm stressed too. It has such a huge amount of stress on me. Right now, like, we're doing remote school, but already my son has a different teacher coming in, and it's been the first
Right.
quarter. Um, but I insist that my son's teachers believe that his educational experience matters and has quality, and that he's not just oppressed at every turn. At every turn, there's just no safe way out for him. um, so one thing that, as an artist, that I did start pre-COVID was an art show, and it's called
Oh,
the Sun. And because it's not just the students that are affected, it's teachers. What new teacher, is going into special education that is blindsided with the cognitive dissonance now that they have to have, that they're supposed to nurture this child and break them down completely of all dignity in the same minute. So
right.
it's teachers, it's the other students that, you know, they feel this. We have the limbic brain system. We know that this affects everybody, the entire community. So what I'm doing with the art show really is to bring awareness. And it went from local, because I wanted it, to have an art show for our ARC, Nebraska ARC senatorial dinner,
Oh, wow.
because it
Huh.
matters, because these students matters. Their experience matters. My experience matters. I, you know, I am also being oppressed, and I'm mad about it, because, I've had a Regent scholarship. I got another scholarship and I flunked out, and I'm mad because I want what other families don't have. I want what they have, which is not to have to worry about this
Right.
daily, hourly. I mean, the first day that my son went to school here in this new district, he didn't make it 2.5 hours before he was restrained by an SRO. Um, and you know what? He's learned that behavior because the school, you know, the school's bar is on the ground.
Oh, I know. It's incredible. And Jeannie was saying, thank you, Michelle. She's giving you virtual hugs. And Vero is saying, yes, sending you more virtual hugs. Um, yeah, and she was saying that schools still believe in restraint and seclusion, especially here in Maryland. Is that Maryland? I always get my M states mixed up. I think it's Maryland.
Yeah.
We were amazed. I have never heard of it before. No way. We said, no way. Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, it's out there, and unfortunately sometimes it's hidden, and parents don't find out until there's been several different restraints, or your son spending times during the day in the seclusion room.
Right. Or they get off the bus with marks.
Yeah,
I took my son that day, those marks I showed you, I took him to the police department. And, this principal is connected. This principal's a coach for a big, he's a baseball coach for a big sports organization at that, in that town. And, they looked at me and they were like, well, we called the school and, it seems like nothing, it seems like, it was on, it's on him.
right.
And, so it takes up all of our time. It takes up all of our resource. It takes up all of our patience, our money. And, the argument here in Nebraska is we put so much emphasis on, early childhood education and getting early. And if we're going to invest all that money, then why are we going to screw it up in the middle? Why are we going to do that? So we started this art show. There's another artist here in Nebraska, and he had an installment. It was his private cell. He was in isolation in prison, and the only reason why he was in isolation is because he was gay.
Wow.
So they put him in solitary confinement, and this person has rose above that, and I have a lot of communication with them, and they're a big inspiration. This they've written poetry and songs and about being in isolation. And just because our kid's voice is tiny or quiet, or it's on an iPad or a Dynavox, or they're poking, they're using their eyes to communicate for the keyboard, it doesn't matter. We have to get our stories out. We have to. And we have to, we have to I want art, and I want it, I want to just put it in the laps of Washington, D.C. and say, you sort through this. Okay. We know what's going on. We know, and, and we want to put this on you. And that's why we have CASA, because we need this legislation.
Oh, so yeah, so true. So true. And I just want to thank you so much, Michele, because just going live can be nerve-wracking. And then talking about your child's story and the impact on yourself and the family and the community is just amazing. And I so appreciate you being able to be here today and spur this conversation on. And as people watch the replay, as you come back and maybe rewatch it, please make comments and questions, post them in the box there, because we can come back and continue this conversation, because it's not done, right? I mean, we're still marching. We still got to do some work.
And actually, Charmaine, I think it's really fired up right now. I think that we are riding on the coattails of many civil rights movements right now. And I think, the disability civil rights movement is the last frontier. So we have to, we have to equal this plane. So I just wanted to say, I will put, a link to my, to the art show. And then everybody, please contact me, contact Charmaine, contact Ross Green, get these book clubs started now, right now, because we need to start changing minds. We can do this. We can have a book club done by the end of the year. And because we need to start, campaigning, legislating, advocating, getting CASA passed. We have to start somewhere.
Exactly. Well, thank you again, Michele, and thank our viewers and our community that comes and, supports our weekly shows here on Thursdays. And we will be back next week. I will be on an hour earlier, because I'm going to be a guest on Amy Pleika's Universal Crossings show. So next week, tune in at 11 o'clock Mountain Time on Thursday, and I will be posting the link for that. But Michele, let's stay connected and let's do some good work together.
Yes, and let's do. Everybody connect today. Don't put it off another minute.
Oh, exactly.
Thank you so much.
So take care, and we shall see you next week.
All right. Bye.